Hi guys, welcome to Dr. Davis Explains It All, and today we're going to be talking about the Gestalt theories. All right, so for your discussion this week, you're going to be searching the internet for an image that's used as part of an advertisement or even published in a written work. I want you to post a link to that image so that we can all view it because that helps us to better dialogue with you. And also want you to provide a brief analysis that looks at both the concepts of visual sensation and visual perception of the image. So in what ways did the designer of this image or whatever it is make use of the Gestalt theories, constructivism, semiotics, and or even the cognitive approaches to help the viewer really pull meaning from that visual image? So you'll find more about this of course, in your textbook, and I've got some information and some videos also for you in the announcements area. So you can check that out. And we're also going to be talking about that a little bit more in just a minute. So in your response post, I want you to look at the image that was posted by your classmate, and I want you to think about your initial reaction to the image, then read their analysis so you can compare notes that way. How does your interpretation of the image change? So I think that's going to be really interesting to dialogue with each other this week. So let's start off, though, talking about a little bit more about sensation and perception. So I know a lot of my students often have questions about the Gestalt theories. So to better explain and to help you out, I'm going to post a website here, and it's that http://graphicdesign.spokanefalls.edu and so forth there, and you can check that out in your own time. I'm also going to place this in the discussion area, so you can click on it there and check it out. There's also a YouTube video that's really offers some great insights to this as well, so you can check that out as well. I do believe I have this posted in the announcements area for you too. So just so you know, you don't have to jot it down right now. All right, so what are the Gestalt theories? Well, the Gestalt theories are made up of a few different elements, and that's going to be similarity, continuation, closure, and proximity. So let's start off by discussing what the Gestalt theory of similarity is. Similarity occurs when objects look similar to one another. People often perceive them as one group or one pattern because they're very similar in nature. So the example I've got right here, it actually is 11 distinct objects, but it appears as one single unit because all the shapes look similar. So unity occurs because the triangular shapes at the bottom of the eagle look similar to the shapes that are around the starburst, and that helps to create similarity in the eye of the viewer and helps us to perceive it as a group or a pattern. So that would be a great example of the Gestalt theory of similarity. Now, the Gestalt theory of continuation is a little different. Continuation occurs when the eye is compelled to move through one object and continue to another. So continuation occurs in this example because the viewer's eye will generally naturally follow that line or curve that's present from the leaf. So the smooth flowing crossbar of the H leads the eye directly to the maple leaf. And so that would be a great example of the Gestalt theory of continuation. Next, we have the Gestalt theory of closure. And closure occurs when an object is incomplete or a space is not completely enclosed. So if enough of the shape is indicated, as is here with this panda, people perceive the whole by filling in that missing information. Excuse me. Although the panda above is not technically complete, if we really look at it, enough of it's present for our eyes, at least in the eyes of the viewer, to complete the shape. So when the viewer's perception completes a shape, closure occurs, and that's going to be the Gestalt theory of closure. And then lastly, we have the Gestalt theory of proximity. So proximity occurs when elements are placed close together. They tend to be perceived as a group because they are close together. So the 9 squares that we have right here are placed, well, on the left-hand side at least, are placed without any proximity. They're perceived as separate shapes because there's not a lot of proximity there. But when the squares are given a close proximity, as in the example on the right, unity occurs. So while they are still, separate shapes and ultimately the same shapes, they're now perceived as one group because of the proximity they have to each other. So I always like to give you a real world example. So let's take a look at this. And this is an advertisement that probably most of you have seen. If you haven't, it's just a really cool advertisement to discuss. So who doesn't love the Heinz ketchup brand? Right now, I just really want a cheeseburger and some fries, and I think I'd be set just looking at this advertisement. So let's look at the design of this advertisement, though. Let's take it a step deeper. Okay, sorry about that. So the sliced appearance of the bottle is really interesting, isn't it? So that being said, I want you to think about what I just discussed in terms of the Gestalt theories and how they're being used here, as well as the cognitive approach. Proximity is definitely present here. If we were to scatter out those tomato slices, then we would see them as separate shapes, not one group. But because they're stacked one on top of the other, we see it as one group. So that's how proximity would be present here. Further, the cognitive approach, which is something else we're going to be discussing, is really triggers something in us. So the cognitive approach here is why I actually want that cheeseburger and fries, because I'm looking at this and I'm seeing Heinz ketchup, which is delicious in its own. I'm seeing that it's fresh and that it's they put a lot of detail in the way they make it, and it makes me want some of that ketchup, some of that brand. So our minds connect that Heinz ketchup is the best, it's the freshest, and then we can make that connection and desire to consume based off of that. All right, so in your written assignment this week, we're looking at, well, I don't want to jump ahead of myself. So the visual principle of Gestalt, which was pioneered by a German theorist, is one of great importance in the design world. So the statement, the whole is different than the sum of its parts, summarizes much of what we just talked about actually with the Gestalt theories. So in this assignment, in your written assignment this week, we're going to explore this statement in a lot more detail. So what I want you to do is I want you to choose a famous work of art. You can check out the course materials in our course, and you should be able to find a lot of good sources there. Of course, you can just scour the internet and find a famous work of art and use that. Whatever draws you is fine with me. So look closely at the work of art you've chosen and identify several of the individual elements that are present in the image. So I want you to imagine the removal of one of those elements. How would the meaning of the image change? I want you to then remove a second element. With the two elements missing, how does the meaning of it change again? So in this brief 2 to 3 page analysis, I want you to identify the image you've chosen, describe the meaning of the image as a whole, then describe the meaning of the image as the first element's removed, and again after the second element's removed. After that, answer the question of what does this exercise show you in terms of how imagery can be used in the medium. So, you know me, I always like to provide you with examples. So I'm going to give you a good example here. So, all right, so for our example, let's take a look at a very famous piece that most of you are probably familiar with, and it's The Last Supper by Leonardo da Vinci. All right, so this world-famous painting is actually not shown in a museum, but rather covers the back wall of the dining hall at the Santa Maria del Gazzi Monastery in Milan, Italy. So how neat is that? It was painted by one of the most famous artists of all time, Leonardo da Vinci, in the late 15th century. Now, this painting depicts the scene of the Last Supper of Jesus with his disciples. Let's imagine some of the elements removed from this piece, though. How would it change the meaning here? So let's say that we removed the plates and items like that from the table. How would it change the meaning of the piece? Let's say that we actually removed Jesus himself from the piece. How would the meaning again change? So when I'm talking about removing elements and discussing how it changes, I'm talking about actual elements in the piece. So I'm talking about removing Jesus or removing the table or removing the disciples, things like that. So let me give you another example. This example is The Creation of Adam by Michelangelo. This is actually located on the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel in Vatican City, Rome. The Creation of Adam was painted by Michelangelo somewhere between the early 1500s. Actually, it was painted between about about 1508 to about 1512. And it's just one of the 9 scenes from the book of Genesis that are painted on the center of the ceiling in the chapel. So, what if we remove the angels from this piece, or even perhaps Adam himself? How would it alter the meaning here? So, remember to only choose one piece of art to discuss in your paper, and then discuss how removing certain elements, 2 elements to be exact, one at a time, would change the meaning of the piece. So if we removed Adam, how would the meaning change? If we removed the angels, how would the meaning change? All right. So otherwise, I hope this helped you to better understand some of the concepts this week. Of course, if you have any questions, you can always reach out to me. Otherwise, we're going to keep it short and sweet like we always do to save time. And if you have any questions at all, just let me know. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Dr. Davis Explains It All. Thank you.